What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance Crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I have a follow-up for yesterday's video, the first Opium War by Extra Credit under the series Extra History. I don't know if I confused it in the last video, but apparently Extra History is the name of the series, and Extra Credit is the channel that creates it. So just a quick clarification on that. I will have a link for Extra Credit's channel at the end of this video. It'll pop up as an icon over here. Just click on it. It'll take you to their channel. You can subscribe, like their videos, all the other good stuff. And there will be a link in the description box for the original video. So if you want to watch the original yourself, or you want to do a reaction to it or whatever else, the link is down there. And if you want to show the original content creator support, the best way to do it is to watch the original video. If you don't feel like watching it twice, what I recommend is you right-clicking on the link in the description box, open it in a new window or a new tab, put the video on mute, have it play in the background while you're watching my video. By the time my video completes, their video completes, and you get both of us a view. Now, with that being said, let's jump into this and see what the continuation is.
Last we left off, the treasury of the British Empire was flowing into China, and the Honorable East India Company was still reeling under the staggering debt it owed the government for underwriting its military conquests in India. Something needed to be done. They needed to find some tradable good, something other than silver, that the Chinese wanted to import to offset the massive costs of the Victorian need for tea. And the answer they found was opium. By the early 1800s, tea sales in England were unimaginably high. Given the quantity they were importing, the average English household spent about 5% of its income just on tea. The government itself was basically propped up by the tea trade. Because the government had lent the Honorable East India Company so much money to conquer parts of India, and because a huge portion of the East India Company's revenue came from transporting tea from China, the country was even more dependent on the tea trade.
I'm curious, why exactly did tea never pick up in the United States? I mean, I understand, like, we went to war with Britain, so probably certain things we didn't want to continue. But given the fact that the colonists were British, I would imagine that tea would have been a staple for them. So I'm just curious, just like, when did tea just not catch on in America? Almost every other place that Britain has colonized, either they already were big into tea or they got into tea after Britain colonized them. So I'm curious. Well, I don't know if tea is a big thing in Canada either. Maybe it's just a North American thing. I don't know.
As that revenue was being used not only to repay the debt the company had incurred, but to pay interest on it. But even as the tea craze was consuming England, the Honorable East India Company was also coming to the realization that their conquests in India weren't realizing the returns they'd hoped. Their plans to grow cotton in India had gone awry as cotton production in the Americas, and especially in Egypt, were on the rise. But it turns out that something else grew really well on all that land that they'd planned to use for cotton: poppies. So the East India Company found its solution. They would grow poppies in India, convert them into opium, sell that at a profit in China, use the profit to buy tea, and then sell that at a profit back in Britain.
Professional drug dealing,
There were only a few problems with this plan. Besides the fact that it meant pushing drugs on an unheard of scale, there was also the issue that opium was technically illegal in China. And the Honorable East India Company, being of course the Honorable East India Company, would never do something illegal. Okay, they would, but they didn't want to risk getting kicked out of China or cut off from its tea. So they set up a market in Calcutta, basically the part of India closest to China that they controlled. And they said, anybody who wants to buy opium, we're selling it right here. No idea what you might want to do with it, but hey, that's not our business. Who wants some opium? Come on. And then they would let the smugglers handle it from there. So now you've got a bunch of dodgy characters selling drugs in the Middle Kingdom, basically backed by the largest corporation and the largest national economy in the world. And as Indian opium turned out to be even stronger than the domestically grown stuff, everybody wanted it. So opium sales skyrocketed, and by 1835 they were moving roughly 3,064,000 pounds of opium per year into China.
This is the thing when it comes to drugs in general. Like, the whole discussion about drugs, for the most part, is overblown or used to push some type of narrative. I've already talked about the whole campaign against marijuana and things like that. And this is coming from somebody that doesn't smoke marijuana. Don't think that I'm somebody that gets high and is trying to defend their use. I don't smoke marijuana at all, but I understand and I can see what the government is trying to do when it comes to uh, criminalizing marijuana, where we have other drugs like tobacco and alcohol that aren't regulated at all. You can go into a store and buy as much of it as you want, uh, and if you end up dying, you end up dying. It's like certain things get pushed and certain things don't, and all of it is designed to have some type of agenda. So it's crazy how people will judge someone for doing something simply because the government told you that what they're doing is bad, when the government themselves have no problem peddling bad shit if it benefits them.
And that number was only going to get bigger, because in 1833 the British government decided to finally do away with the Honorable East India Company's monopoly on the opium trade. Now everybody wanted a piece of the action, and opium started flowing into China completely unregulated, increasing supply, driving prices down, and making the substance even more accessible. By 1839, nearly 5,639,000 pounds of opium would be pouring into China every year. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because it's not like the Chinese were just sitting around letting this happen. As piles of money which the government desperately needed flowed out of the country, the emperor appointed an official named Lin Zexu to address the disastrous effects of opium on the country. He was brilliant, incorruptible, and utterly inflexible. He saw the threat of the West and the morally corrupting effect that opium had had on the Chinese people, and decided that the only approach to take was the complete removal of opium from China. By March of 1839, he had reached Canton. It was the source of all this opium, so he planned to cut it off at its source. His actions were swift and uncompromising. He arrested thousands of Chinese opium traders, forced addicts into rehabilitation programs, confiscated opium pipes, and closed opium dens. And then he took on the Western traders. At first, he wrote an open letter to Queen Victoria, appealing to her conscience, a letter which it's very likely she never received. When he got no reply, he demanded that the foreigners surrender their stores of opium. The foreign merchants stalled and prevaricated, giving up small amounts of their opium stock, but nowhere near what Lin Zexu had demanded. So he marshaled the troops and put the foreign warehouses to siege. The merchants holed up for a month and a half, but in the end they gave in, and were forced to surrender 21,000 chests of opium. For the next 23 days, Zexu burned the opium with lye. This was a king's ransom in opium. The amount of money this destruction represented is staggering. It was roughly 1/6 as much as the British Empire, the largest, most far-flung empire in the world, had spent on its military the previous year. Needless to say, everybody involved was going bankrupt. Now, there is some debate over whether the Chinese offered tea in exchange for the surrendered opium, but what is certain is that the merchants never received any tea, and instead the local chief superintendent of British trade, one Captain Charles Elliot, promised the merchants that the British government would cover their losses if they would leave peacefully. Which, of course, the British government absolutely refused to do. The outcry over this illegal seizure of British goods began to grow. Meanwhile, back in China, a reprehensible incident occurred where some drunken British sailors beat a man to death.
Damn. I was about to say, and this is where the dragon, the Bruce Lee story starts.
Lin Zexu demanded the execution of a British sailor in recompense. Captain Elliot, who actually disliked the opium trade and was somewhat sympathetic to the Chinese situation, put out a reward for evidence of who had committed the murder, and gave money to the victim's family. He then had the criminals tried on his ship, inviting Lin Zexu or a representative to witness the proceedings, although none took him up on the invitation. He sentenced the men to hard labor back in England. But this wouldn't work for Lin Zexu. After all, the whole point of his demand was to show that foreigners couldn't just violate Chinese law on Chinese soil. So in response, he stopped all food being supplied to the British and posted signs telling them that frothier water sources had been poisoned. Next, he ordered the Portuguese to eject all British from Macau. He was going to see these pesky British and their drugs off Chinese soil once and for all. So the British retreated to a barren nothing island off the coast.
I mean, I can't be mad at him. I mean, I understand. Like the last episode, they talked about how unflexible the Chinese were, which is kind of what led to this situation to begin with. But at this point, I don't mind them being unflexible at all. It's like, I get around this time, Britain had a bit of a imperial boner that going on where they just wanted to have control over every damn thing. And this is just another tactic to try to get control of China, whether directly or indirectly. And I would imagine that this person knew what Britain was trying to do. Hopefully, well, I'd imagine they knew about Britain's imperialism and things like that. That's something I probably have to learn, I guess. Like, how aware was other countries of Britain and their empire? Like, how much, how, because I imagine China was kind of closed off. So how much do they know about Britain and all the other areas they controlled besides just India? If he was aware, then yeah, I would imagine he knows. I said imagined a lot. I would hope that he knows about Britain's plans.
Oil once and for all. So the British retreated to a barren nothing island off the coast, a barren nothing island that will eventually be known as Hong Kong. Their food crisis was at a head, though. Captain Elliot sent a request for food sales to resume. The response was delayed, so he sent men ashore to buy food. But as they were heading back, these provisions were seized by Chinese officials. Soon, a firefight broke out between the blockading Chinese junks and the British ships, and thus began the First Opium War.
All right. So now we're in a position where the Opium War has officially started. So the next 3 parts is going to be really interesting because, again, I don't know anything about the Opium War besides the very basic clip notes. So I'm interested in seeing exactly how far it stretches, what they do, things like that. It's going to be interesting. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I look forward to see you guys on the future videos. Again, make sure you support the original content creator by checking out their channel. And they also have a Patreon as well. I'm not sure what the benefits of their Patreon is, so you probably have to go to the original video and look in the description box down below and see if it's something that might interest you. But it's always good to try to support the original content creators, especially historian or content creators that do history videos, because for some reason YouTube likes to demonetize history videos regardless of the context. It's kind of like how they handle the whole COVID situation. Like, why is it that the video gets demonetized if you talk about it? That makes no sense, especially if you're like educating people on it. How is that supposed to be demonetizing? I have no idea why that happens. Like, certain topics I understand. Like, if you want to talk about Germany during World War II, they might want to review the video before they just give you access to their algorithm and money and things like that. But COVID, come on now. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm Devon DaVinci. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully you've been enlightened. I certainly have. I'm going to give you the deuces, and I will see you on a future video. Deuces.